would like, if I may, to go on a strange journey.
Welcome to the first episode of Terror on the Tube. This will be my new bi-weekly podcast, where I dive deep into episodes of the best classic horror shows from the last 60 years. From The Twilight Zone to Monsters, from Chiller to Tales from the Dark Side, you'll find them all here. And what better place to start than with The Twilight Zone? There are so many solid episodes of the show that I could write a book about it, and many people have. Over the course of its 5-year run, 156 episodes were produced, with 92 of them written by series creator Rod Serling. For those of you keeping track at home, that's 59% of the entire run. That kind of output is almost unheard of, and I don't think that there are any shows currently on the air that can make that claim. To say that Rod Serling was the driving force behind the series would be an understatement. By the late 50s, Serling had become a proven success on television. He had created several successful teleplays such as Patters, which aired on Kraft Television Theatre, and Requiem for a Heavyweight for Playhouse 90. Despite his success, Serling often found himself frustrated by the restrictions of the medium, and up against both networks and sponsors, who insisted on changes to his work for a variety of reasons. By 1956, Serling was ready to tackle more controversial subject matter than in his earlier work. He penned the teleplay Noon on Doomsday for the United States Steel Hour as a commentary on the total lack of repentance and defensiveness he saw in Money, Mississippi, where 14-year-old Emmett Till, who was African American, was murdered for flirting with white, 21-year-old Carolyn Bryant. Bryant's husband and stepbrother murdered Till and dumped his body in a river. Both men were acquitted of the crime, and months after the trial, protected by double jeopardy, admitted to the murder in a magazine. Serling's screenplay originally mirrored the case, but was moved from the South, and the witness changed to a Jewish pawnbroker. By the time the network changed the script, it barely resembled the original tale and debuted to bad reviews. After the failure of his screenplay, Serling decided that tales with robots, aliens and other supernatural elements would give him more freedom and less interference in expressing controversial ideas than in traditional settings. He penned The Time Element in 1957, which served as a pilot for his new show. In the story, a man travels back to Honolulu in 1941, and unsuccessfully tries to warn anyone about the impending attack on Pearl Harbor. The script was rejected and sat on the shelf for a year until it was discovered by producer Bert Grenay, who turned it into an episode of Desilu Playhouse. The show was a success, and Serling was given the green light to begin production on The Twilight Zone. Time Enough at Last is one of 4 episodes to feature the late Burgess Meredith. I've been a fan of Mr. Meredith's work over the years. Growing up, I was a huge fan of the Rocky movies, in which he played the gruff but lovable Mickey. On television, he had a starring role in the campy Batman TV series, playing the diabolical Penguin in 21 episodes of the show and the theatrical release. He also appeared in several episodes of Serling's Twilight Zone follow-up, Night Gallery, and even took over narration duties from the late Serling in the theatrical release of Twilight Zone, the movie. This tells the tale of Mr. Henry Bemis. Mr. Bemis has a passion for the written word, and in what little free time he has, is often found with his bespectacled face in a book, magazine, or newspaper. In his role as a bank teller, Bemis attempts to read David Copperfield while assisting his customers. These actions lead him to shortchange an annoyed customer. Bemis's boss, and later his wife, Both chide him for wasting his time on reading doggerel. His wife even goes so far as to deface a poetry book, which Bemis discovers while attempting to fill his wife's request to read to her. She sounds like a peach, doesn't she? The following day, Bemis takes his lunch inside the bank vault where he knows he will not be disturbed. Minutes later, after reading a newspaper headline about the H-bomb, an explosion rocks the foundations of the bank, knocking Bemis unconscious. After coming to, Bemis emerges from the vault to find the bank demolished. He stumbles from the back and comes face to face with the destruction of the entire city. As Bemis begins his search for survivors, he comes across the remains of the grocery store, which will provide him enough food for a lifetime. But he realizes he has no one to share it with. Overwhelmed by loneliness, he attempts to commit suicide with a found revolver, but stays his hand upon seeing the remains of the public library in the distance. The books are still intact, and Bemis realizes he now has all the time in the world. His despair lifted, Bemis contentedly begins to sort through a lifetime of literature, carefully organizing year after year of reading. As he bends down to pick up the first book, however, he stumbles and his glasses shatter against a rock. Virtually blind without them, he sits on the steps and bursts into tears, shouting, "That's not fair. That's not fair at all. There was time now? There was all the time I needed. That's not fair." Serling offers his closing narration and the credits roll. The show shined with stories like this. A man, whom you pity, is finally given a chance to take part in the one thing that truly brings him joy, and right at the end it is all taken away. Meredith shines as Henry Bemis, and the small yet bullying cast of co-stars just adds to your sympathy for the man. If you haven't seen it, be sure to check it out because it is classic TV. And that will wrap up our first episode of Terror on the Tube. Be sure to check back with us next week for a all-new Gospels of Horror with the Unholy Corpse Child. Same YouTube time, kinda, same YouTube channel. Also come visit us at www.psychotoxin.com for all kinds of scares.